Cosmere can be a confusing place.
From allomancy to surge binding, there's a lot to look out for.
We're your hosts and escorts to the realms. I'm Griff.
And I'm Alex.
And this is the Silverlight Guide to the Cosmere.
Welcome to episode 3.
Yes, welcome
Griff,
to episode 3.
I wanted to run something by you.
Okay.
So, as our listeners will have noticed, we have done the preface and the prologue.
Right.
So what if we look up synonyms? Because there's more.
I'm sure.
There's more.
Well, we could also slide into other terminologies.
We could.
Like, we could do prelude, which is musical, but
one of the episodes I did name, which let's look at I did do prelude.
Oh, you already did.
We did prelude and prologue, so this could be the preface.
Could be the preface, yes. We have a foreword.
We have the foreword.
There's another term that can come after foreword.
So, synonyms for prologue, introduction.
Okay.
Pretty solid, except
we really would have to put that at the beginning if we were going to do it.
We would.
Yeah.
So we've used forward, preface, preamble.
Ooh, I like preamble.
Preamble's pretty good.
Preamble is pretty good.
Then they have prelude, preliminary. Not as good.
That's more of an adjective than a noun, in my opinion.
According to Oxford Languages, intro is a separate word from introduction.
Really?
Okay. Here's the one that tickled my fancy.
Okay.
Exordium.
Ooh.
I know.
What does that actually mean, though? Like, what's the connotation for an exordium?
The beginning or introductory part, especially of a discourse or treaty.
Oh, I mean...
Or treatise.
Yeah, yeah. No, we need to use that.
So what we could do is, for each system, as we go along, the exordium for each system could be talking about the investiture.
This is true.
So exordium, parts 1, 2, and 3, will be coming out.
Ah, okay, for episode 4, or, yes.
So our episode 4 will be labeled exordium.
Okay.
That's what I like.
I mean, I pretty much think that, like, exordium kind of encompasses what we're doing here entirely, to be fair.
That's true.
Because our entire thing is a discourse and a treatise on the Cosmere.
On the Cosmere.
So...
Yes. Video essays delivered to you bi-monthly.
Yes. Video essays? Audio essays.
Audio. Did I say video?
You said video.
I meant audio.
I mean, we could do video essays at some point.
Eventually. I'd really like to do an interlude where we play the Stormlight Call to Adventure.
Ooh, yeah, we should. That is absolutely true.
And then we'll have an interlude on a Cosmere tabletop. And we could have several interludes on that. I
still need to get finished with that system, but...
Right.
I mean, that is something I would like to continue to work on, because I think that it would be... While I think I need to streamline the system that I currently have, I think the premise that I was working from works well, where there's an investiture system that is system agnostic, or not system, planet agnostic. And while there may be addendums to the rules for each planet specifically, such as, like, it doesn't seem like you can flare Stormlight in the way that you can flare Allomancy.
Right. But then with Stormlight it seems like you can grow it's like a muscle you exercise.
Right.
More so than
Yeah, like, I think that there would have to be some system specific, because of course breath doesn't work the same way as Allomancy or Furukami or any of it. But the underpinnings that I have for the investiture system, I think, will still cover all of that and allow it to work in a similar fashion. Enough so that you could have a breath user sitting alongside an Allomancer
and have at least some sort of cohesive...
Right, yeah, some cohesive underpinnings for everything. So.
Absolutely. So, the preface today, life updates. You got anything cool? How many tabletop RPGs are you running or are you in right now?
Two. I'm running a Zelda one,
Uh-huh.
which is based off of the Fantasy Age system.
Uh-huh.
And then I have a actual Dungeons and Dragons running off the 5th edition. I actually got to play both. Well, okay, I sort of got to run both last night. So I was running the Zelda one, and then one of our players lost power.
Oh no.
And since we're playing on a virtual tabletop,
right,
that effectively cut him from the game. And since we only have 3 party members to begin with, losing one of them,
pretty good chunk.
Yeah. So we unfortunately cut that short. They did get to do one extended test, which is it's instead of a single roll to achieve something, it's several rolls over a course. Very elegant system. Fantasy Age actually has a lot going for it, and I think it's a very underrated system. And then in the D&D game, they actually got to go through, and they had a choice of 3 things in front of them. They could either go help these people retake their town, go take care of a bunch of kobolds that seem to be preparing for battle, or go retake a monastery that had been taken over by mysterious foes.
Huh.
And I did have plans for how things would progress depending on which one they decided to deal with first. They decided to deal with the town, and then they decided to deal with that in the, in my opinion, dumbest way possible, which is go into the brightly lit building. They know this town, by the way, is overrun by undead.
Okay.
They come in, they see no undead. They immediately head for the brightest lit building and decide to start exploring that.
My face, the listeners cannot see.
No.
But a mixture of incredulity and confusion.
Yes. So...
Well, cool. So no life updates?
No, not really. I have a game going. I really wish the Zelda one had worked out because I had a really good dungeon actually, designed for it.
Speaking of cool, I got a sunburn.
I'm sorry.
No, it's alright. I took the week off and ended it with a day at the pool, and...
Which I'm sure was pleasant.
It was.
But it did come with a sunburn.
Yes. And now we're here.
While live streams continue to come out with updates on the books, we have already said that we're not going to be spoiling any of that.
Yes.
With the Kickstarter books, and there's nothing else to report on Sanderson news.
Right.
The Kickstarter keeps going. Well,
yeah. They have given some thank you goals.
Yes, that is
which
true.
Are not spoiler, and so they'll do a double color print plate for maps and such in the books.
Right.
And they've said that they're upping the quality of what's going to go in the boxes, which I imagine was going to be good quality to begin with.
Right. So also, for any of those interested, especially for those who listen to the audiobooks, we have already gotten news that Kate Redding and
Michael
Kramer will not be doing the audiobooks for the Kickstarters.
At least not all of them.
So apparently they're holding open auditions for that. So hopefully, obviously, they'll be good quality, but they will somewhat stand out from the normal process for Sanderson's books. Because I think that... Who was it that did Elantris? It wasn't Michael Kramer, was it?
I don't know. I mean, it was the first one, right? So
right, and I know that and Warbreaker had different.
And I really liked Warbreaker's narrator.
Yes,
I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, I think she did a great job.
I thought the narrator who did Elantris was also good.
Yes.
My issue was that there was also then the short story in Arcanum Unbounded, The Hope of Elantris.
Right.
And Michael Kramer read that.
Right.
And between the two, I tend to pronounce things the way the audiobook does.
Gotcha.
And they had very different pronunciations. I preferred the book where it was a little odd, where we might read it and say like the Raod, or kind of mush those even together and say like road.
Right.
The narrator for Elantris would pronounce it Riod.
Right.
Or Sheod. All the vowels had very kind of like Spanish or Latin languages,
Right.
everything is pronounced. And then in the Hope of Elantris, this was not the case, and it was Shoud and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't sound as cool. That's my only complaint there.
Yeah.
As these are promised to be somewhat standalone-ish.
I will say, the only complaint I have about the audiobook from the initial, and this is only because I did read the 10th anniversary edition, he gave Hoyd a very old man sounding voice, so it was quite a shock going from Michael Kramer's typical Hoyd voice.
That's funny.
To this very old man sounding voice in Elantris, and there was just there was a big disconnect there.
That's funny.
So,
but that is our first tangent of the day.
This is true.
Perhaps we should have a tangent counter.
That might be fun.
And then there's Dragonsteel Con.
Yeah, when is that?
November 14th and 15th.
Oh, okay.
Which should directly coincide with the Lost Metal.
Release.
Let's get hyped.
Where is... Are they doing it virtually this year, or are they doing it in person?
It is in Salt Lake City.
I mean, it's in November.
Yeah.
We could start saving money.
Yep.
And potentially attend.
Yep, we could.
It might be kind of fun.
Yes.
Especially considering we're doing this.
Yeah.
We could do an episode to coincide with the Dragon Con.
Yeah.
Because if we both go in on a hotel room...
Oh, yeah.
That'll make it super cheap.
Yeah.
Like we don't even need anything fancy. Like I can deal with a Motel 6.
Oh, sure. There's I believe it's being held in either a convention center or a hotel that has a really large
so we could potentially even get a room
and
there.
They say what I've seen online is they suggest getting the one. It's like I think it's in a convention center because the people online say get the hotel across the street.
Oh, okay.
It's worth it.
Gotcha.
So I think that's definitely something we should look into. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it'd be worth being there and not doing it live per se,
right.
but you know.
Right. I'm glad we're getting the omnibus with the signed bit from Sanderson because I've never really gone for signed things.
Are you talking about with the comic?
With the comic.
With the White Sand comic, yeah.
I promise this has a point. I've never really gone for...
Right.
In my life, I was like, I don't really need the person I admire to sign.
Right.
I'm starting to see the appeal.
Yes.
And I know at something like Dragon Con or Dragonsteel Con, he may not sign at all, and if he does, it's going to be very limited.
Right.
And he's specifically said the reason that he holds the Q&As is because he can't sign everybody's books, so he wants to give a little something.
I will say, okay, so here's the thing on that front, working off that, like, I agree. Most of the time, I've never gone for signed copies of things, like even Dresden Files.
Right.
I wouldn't feel. I don't know. I wouldn't feel a need.
Right.
To get any of the Dresden Files signed by Jim Butcher. I mean, if they do, great, but whatever. Brandon Sanderson's. Okay, he doesn't even have the highest quality books I have read.
Sure.
They're great, don't get me wrong. Like, this is not a dig on Sanderson at all. But there are some people that I have read that I would say, literary-wise, they are more poetic writers or whatever.
Sure. You like their prose better. Their prose is...
Right, yeah. Right. But the thing that I will say about Brandon Sanderson, and one of the reasons that I love... And this will actually kind of work into what we're doing. One of the reasons I love the Cosmere is because I have never seen somebody do the connectivity between shared worlds and the world building that he does. And it just makes me so goddamn excited for the Cosmere and to see where it's going.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think one of the reasons that I love getting all of this stuff from Brandon Sanderson and the Cosmere and all of that is because he makes it an exciting universe to explore.
Right.
And it's not just focused on one person. Like, I think more than any other, even any anime series I have ever followed, I can see myself making a character
Right.
that works in the universes that he sets up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know, I just, like, I find myself getting more excited for shit that Brandon Sanderson puts out than pretty much anything else. Like, yeah, I'm all down for the signed copies of the omnibus of White Sand. I'm super fucking excited for the not just the 4 books that are coming out in 2023, but all of the other boxes and products that's going to come with it. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see the appeal for... I don't think I would ever express it for any other author.
Yeah.
But I think for Brandon Sanderson, I want to kind of start going for some of the higher end things, as it were. Anyway, so on to the subject of today's episode.
Yes.
Which is Investiture.
Which is the reason a lot of nerds enjoy the Cosmere.
Yes. Because while there is a plethora of magic systems throughout Brandon Sanderson's world, they all center around an expression of investiture.
Right.
Of some sort.
Right. So if you've been following along from the beginning, we have started at the top
Yes.
and divided the Supreme Being into the shards, and now we're getting into how those shards influence the world
around them. Yes, and now we are here.
Yep.
And talking about Investiture.
We are talking about Investiture.
Which is complicated.
It is complicated. Today's episode is about Investiture.
As a concept.
As a concept.
Not any specific... I mean, we will be discussing the specific planets.
We will be. Yeah.
That is...
Briefly.
I mean, we will be... Yeah, we will do a cursory overview of them. But that is... We are not going to be going into any of them in depth in this episode.
No. We're going to be keeping it superficial, and by superficial, I mean incredibly deep.
But we're going to be going deep instead of broad.
Yes. Yes.
Instead of covering each individual one, we're just going to be diving into the concept as it sits.
And so why is this important?
Well, because Investiture is... I mean, it is the underpinning of the Cosmere as a literary subject. It is the thing that sets Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere apart from any other fantasy setting.
I agree.
And so that, you know, like, you could... If you wanted to take any magic system, you could potentially attach Investiture to it in a retroactive manner. Like, you could say, oh yes, Harry Potter's magic is run by Investiture, or whatever.
Right.
But...
Through the wood shard.
Yeah, right.
That is through the wands.
Right.
No, that doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. Although, actually, nope. Not getting into that. You started my brain on theorizing how that would actually function, and no, I'm not going there this episode.
It would be, it's an alternate Cosmere where endowment is on Earth.
No, see, what it would be is it's a Cosmere system where the magical creatures are the ones that carry Investiture, and when the core of the wand is inserted in, that is what brings Investiture with it. So the Phoenix Feather and Harry's wand, or...
Sure.
So... Stop.
But there's
no!
There's the innate magic of the wizard that they perform without the wand.
Okay, but except they don't actually perform any magic without the wand, except in the movies. In the book, you need the wand to... well, sort of.
With the glass at the zoo.
Yeah.
It's not directed.
Okay, but that'd be kind of like allomancy versus what Kelsier was given by preservation in The Secret History.
Yeah.
It's like focused investiture rather than raw energy in you.
I mean, it's really it would be so that the investiture from the magical animals would bleed enough into society that those people who could access that with a wand could, under duress, access it.
Right, well, because of course the duress is what causes the crack in the spirit web and allows the investiture to flow into them. So honestly, what it would be like is each one of those instances would be like a mini snap. Versus the one big snap with the Allomancers.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I could actually see that working. And then get enough cracks and you become a full-fledged wizard. And then the wand is the core of your, or the direction of your power, etc., etc. Anyway.
Tangent 1. No, wait. Tangent 5.
So, investiture as it sits is complicated on much the same way that Adonalsium is complicated, insofar as we don't have a lot on investiture as a concept.
Right. The fine-tuning is not there.
We can extrapolate a lot from
which
we will, yes. Because unfortunately, again, like the Adonalsium episode, when we ask, okay, what do we have canonically, not a whole lot is the answer.
Right.
We have a lot of examples canonically.
We do.
But we don't have a lot on investiture planet agnostic. It's always shown to us through some sort of system.
Right.
On a planet like Roshar, Scadrial, whatever.
So what we can say, though, is that investiture is what powers the magic system.
Yes. No matter what magic system you find, if it is in the Cosmere, it is powered by investiture.
Yes. And investiture is something that transcends the 3 realms. According to the wiki.
Okay. I don't actually hold to that, and I'd like to see what they are referencing when they say that.
Sure.
Because in my opinion, from what we have seen, I can't actually support that point of view. And I would like to know what specifically...
So, we have to do a caveat. Okay. And this caveat comes directly from Brandon Sanderson.
Okay.
And that is, and this somewhat ties into the fact that I've been listening to his podcast with Dan Wells, Intentionally Blank. This is not what I was talking with you earlier about.
Right.
But he, as his prerogative, he can retroactively say he was wrong about a word of Brandon.
Okay.
So what he answers at conventions and signings is loosely canonical.
But he can go back and retroactively...
If needed. So, for those listening, anything where I say, this was stated by word of Brandon, we have to take it with a pinch of salt, that it may change going forward. So, in this case, Brandon Sanderson, at a signing in Houston in 2014, said, investiture is intended to be the building blocks of the Cosmere, so I would say for the most part it transcends the different realms, probably more of the spiritual if anything, but more accurately it transcends them. And this was an answer to the question, what is the realmatic composition of investiture? So he's saying...
So I don't think... Okay, here's the thing. I think I see what Brandon is saying. I don't think transcend was actually the right word.
Sure.
What I would have personally used, had I been saying this, is permeate.
Okay.
Therefore, it exists in all 3 realms.
Right. It does not.
It does not transcend them, but it does exist in all 3, so therefore there is no realmatic... Or, what's the term?
Realmatic composition?
Yeah, there isn't one... Or, what's the term?
Realmatic composition?
Yeah, there isn't one because it permeates all 3.
Sure.
It's like asking the composition of, okay, what's the composition of energy in our universe? Well, what form are you asking? Energy in and of itself manifests in multiple ways, and it doesn't have a specific composition.
Right.
It just depends on what form you're looking at it in.
Right. But, I mean, he does say it is... more spiritual than anything.
Right, which I would agree with.
Right, because of the way that
people become users. Right, because you have to have cracks in your spirit web to become an investiture user.
That's right.
which I think we covered in one of the other episodes.
I believe we did. If we didn't, let us know. Email us,
Right.
guidedcosmere@gmail.com.
But I will I will say, however, that again, like I stated before, if it and may if I did not say it before, they'll be hearing this the first time. Narratively, that is brilliant. In reality, that is fucking horrifying. You only get magical powers through major trauma.
Yes.
Fuck.
I mean...
Well, okay, except for breath users.
Right.
But even then, you're pulling that, like, kind of almost vital essence from someone else. Which is kind of horrifying in and of itself.
Right.
Just in a different fashion.
Yes.
Also, we kind of have to take both Elantris and Warbreaker with a bit of grain of salt when talking about their investiture use, because I don't know if Brandon had the building blocks of his Cosmere created at those two.
I would say for Elantris, maybe, as we've stated before, it feels weird to have them in that state. Warbreaker came out after Mistborn.
Did it?
It did.
Really?
We've had this conversation twice.
I'm sure we have, probably. That still surprises me, because it does not seem like... The way the story is set up, it does not seem like a post-Mistborn story.
Right.
The way it's structured just does not seem like post-Mistborn to me.
When we talk about, and maybe we'll do an episode on the chronological order, and that'll be mostly a discussion about where we see the thing going, but Sanderson has stated that the order in which they are released is mostly chronological order.
Right.
So Warbreaker does happen in that 300 years between Mistborn 1 and Mistborn 2.
Oh shit, I'm gonna have to adjust my reading order then. My chronological reading order, I mean. My set reading order of here's the intro for new readers, that's not going to change.
Oh, sure, but the
chronological one is going to have to.
Yeah. Though we don't know where it falls in that 300 years.
Right, but
it's fine.
But considering there is no other book that falls within those 300 years,
right.
That's where I need to place it now rather than
I mean, but it would be before Stormlight. And Stormlight takes place just right before Era 2.
Right. So what I have is now in my brain, not counting any of the short stories, which I need to work in as well. It goes White Sand, then Elantris, then Mistborn, then Warbreaker, then Stormlight, then Mistborn 2.
Yeah.
And the short stories sit in there as well for various books for obvious reasons.
Various books for obvious reasons. Good podcast title.
Yeah.
But back to Investiture.
Yeah, back to Investiture as it sits. But again, like as I said, canonically we don't have a whole lot.
No.
We know that each shard has its own.
Right.
We do know that Investiture is, or the capacity for Investiture use is created through the spiritual realm.
Right.
Now my question is, and I know we have this for Scadrial, but we don't necessarily have this for others, is whether or not Investiture users are created intentionally.
Intentionally by the
shards. Because we know for a fact that Preservation himself intentionally created Allomancer through Lerasium. Wait, or was that the Lord Ruler?
The Lord Ruler created
Lerasium. From Preservation's power from the well.
Right.
Okay. Which...
Before we go on,
yes.
A caveat to our listeners. This is likely the most complex part to talk about.
Yes.
Because you cannot describe a word with itself.
Right.
You can.
Right.
There are. You can't explain certain topics. This is kind of like that. So I'd say from here on out, if we say something, and for certain that it's wrong, forgive us. We are mere humans.
Yes.
We are going to do a lot of extrapolation, a lot of theory, a lot of discussion on how we see it from our point of view, from what we've listened to and read.
Right.
And as if we were talking about it late at night at a bar, and we're like, hey, let's talk about investiture. So
here's the complication with investiture on Scadrial.
Sure.
And this is going to be a little bit of tangent because this is Scadrial specific.
Tangent number 20.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So we know that Ferukami was created by Preservation and Ruin working together.
Yes.
We don't know a whole lot on the origins of hemalurgy.
Right.
But we do know that it is more Ruin oriented because it is endpoint negative.
I believe it was created by... You could say it was created by Ruin.
Right. But here's the thing. Allomancy was not created by Preservation. It was created using Preservation's power, but it was created by the Lord Ruler.
We could probably have a lengthy semantic discussion about whether a sliver could be considered the whole...
Right. But so it doesn't change that much about the functional mechanics of Scadrial, but it does make me kind of interested on the narrative side.
Going back to what you were asking, are investiture users intentionally created?
Right. So, yes, on the Lerasium side of things, but not by Preservation, by the Lord Ruler.
Unless it was Preservation's manipulation of the whole situation for him to create that via his power.
True. Well,
but this is just...
Okay, but here's the thing we also know. We know there's genetic compound to being a Allomancer. Or
right.
Component, not compound. There's a genetic component to it.
You have to be part Ska.
Yes. You have to be part of... Well, no, you have to be part noble.
Right. Part noble and part Ska.
Yes.
Wait, definitely noble.
You don't need to be... You don't need to be part Ska. You need to be part noble. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you need to be part noble because the nobles were the original...
Yes, that's right.
Or Mistborns from the creation of Lerasium.
I'm already wrong.
It's all good.
It's all good.
I was working through it in my own brain, and I was going to be like, no. But anyway, yes. So here's the thing, though. So we know there's a genetic component, which is you do need to be part noble. However, there's also the snap.
Right.
Which means that while being part noble, you also... Okay, so this goes back to my premise, which is we know that the cracks in the spirit web
right.
allow the investiture of the shard to be poured into the person.
Right.
Which is what makes an investiture user.
Yes.
And so we know that is created... Those cracks are either created by physical or mental trauma.
Right.
Usually both, but...
Right.
Hand
in hand.
It could be at any point that somebody could be purely mentally traumatized and still become an investiture user while being physically perfectly fine. But whatever, that's not important here.
Kaladin.
Right, yeah, there you go. Actually, that is a perfect example. But it goes back to that intentional thing, which is... And it makes me think that it has to be somewhat intentional because, like, if it were just... If we... Okay, to use a Gnostic term here, if we think that investiture is just emanating off of the shards...
Okay.
Then anybody that gets cracks in their spirit web should potentially have that investiture flow into them. If they exist in the spiritual realm alongside the shard of their planet. Or shards.
I think we touch on this in the episode we've recorded about Scadrial.
Okay.
There's definitely a component of the more powerful investitures.
Right.
or the usage of investiture that has to do with something in the physical or the cognitive realm being the focus of that investiture. So the metal on Scadrial,
Right.
the Nile bond on Roshar,
Right.
for however it works, the Sheod on Elantris.
Right. Right.
Somewhat. Yeah, because you have to have that to be able to do the Aeons.
Yes. Although there are other access, there are
other
ways to access
access
the door. We've seen what's his name with the martial arts be able to do it.
Yes.
And of course the Fjordans can do it.
Yes.
Oh well, they may not access the door.
Is it not?
I think they access Dominion's power, not preservation or not devotions.
I thought the door was what the power is after the gooification. And it was just the way that they were accessing it created different effects.
And again, we've hit that point where Elantris is complicated because it was created before this was... Because I didn't think that... Since Elantrian's power, say, diminishes as they move away from the city.
Yes.
I figured that when the shards were turned into plasma in the cognitive realm, I figured they kind of formed pools that were dependent on where you were, which is why that specific magic only works in that area. I.e., Elantrian's power reducing as they get further away from the city.
Right.
And potentially you get far enough away, it'll stop working entirely.
Maybe because the Fjordell magic thing has to do a lot with sacrifices and blood and body mutation, that's feeding them I mean, obviously that sacrifice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that I don't necessarily think they're accessing the door. I think, or unless their term for door, it just covers any kind of magic on the planet whatsoever.
That's what I thought it was.
Okay, fair. That might be. I always figured it was kind of because they reference the martial arts that the dude is doing, and doesn't it talk about him shining or something as he's doing it?
Yeah, it starts glowing or something.
Yeah, and we see the Elantrians also glowing with their light and magic and things like that. Mm-hmm. I kind of figured the door was specifically referencing Devotion's power, but it could be Dominion's as well. It never makes the...
Maybe it's just the door is the term that Chris uses for the two of them together?
Well, no, because what's his name? The main character of Elantris.
Raiden?
Yeah, Raiden specifically mentions the door.
True.
It's not just mentioned in the afterword from Chris, so...
This is confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing.
I'd love...
And it's even more confusing because it's Elantris, and there's fuckery there.
Black magic.
Shenanigans.
I guess maybe let's turn it back towards... extrapolating on investiture.
Right. So I feel like there has to be at least some semi-conscious component. Intent. Okay, here's the thing. Actually. A lot... Yeah, that is the one core thing you get to with investiture on almost all levels, is intent has to be there.
That's right.
So...
They show it time and time again.
in Stormlight Archives, even in frickin' Elantris, because they just waving your fingers won't make the glowy.
Yeah, you have to
you have to intend to draw in the air for it to...
Yes, and then you have to feel it inside. You have to let the door flow through you.
Right. So I feel like, yes, those who become... There has to be at least some level of intent on the shards end of things for someone to become, or there is an intent on the splinters side of things, because if we look at Roshar, honor is shattered,
Splintered, yes.
Splintered, whatever.
For correct terminology.
Okay. Honor is splintered. There is, I mean, eventually, yes, he'll be able to pull himself together.
Right.
But currently, he does not have any intent to put into things.
No.
Not on the end that we think. Not to the level that we think.
Right.
But we do know that the Honor Spren and the Stormfather are both there. They have intent. They can form bonds even though Honor is splintered.
Right.
And so, therefore, the intent is still there, even if it's not specifically on Honor's... even if it's not a core intent on Honor's part. Because of the fact that Honor is splintered.
I think I'm following along. Before we get too far away from it, I wanted to mention that I definitely think there is an intention to create investiture users, given the examples of cultivation and preservation, manipulating, because each shard has at least somewhat of a foresight.
Right.
Where they can't tell exactly what will happen, but they can tell everything that could happen.
Right. And pick up on the more likely strands.
And they manipulate that.
Yes.
And definitely create investiture users.
Right. I was actually going to bring up Lift specifically. Because of the fact that Lift could not get the use of Lifelight spontaneously.
No.
It had to be specifically given to her by preservation. Or not, by cultivation. And so, therefore, I think, the Honor Spren creating, or actually all of the Spren creating Surge Binders is actually very much the same thing, which is Honor may not have intent, but the Spren do. And they are splinters of... not necessarily Honor specifically.
No.
We know the Honor Spren, however, are specifically splinters of Honor.
And then Cultivation Spren are splinters of
cultivation.
And then any other Spren that can bond is a combination.
Right. So the fact is, the intent is there even if the majority of the consciousness is splintered in the case of Honor.
Right.
So the fact is that... which... okay, that brings up some interesting things, but that's also kind of more on the Roshar end of things than Investiture, as it's...
We can probably save that then for the...
Because... well, no, they're just Major Spren. The child.
Oh, right.
And Towerlight.
That would be... yes.
That would just be a Major Spren like the Stormfather. It wouldn't be a shard...
Right. It would, yes, like the Stormfather, or like the Night Watcher.
Right, or like the Night Watcher, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would just be a major Spren. Complicated.
Investiture is complicated. That's, I mean, you've heard us say it before.
Right.
You've heard us say it again.
And again, unfortunately, like, it'd be... As I have said before, and I will probably say again, I really hope at some point Brandon Sanderson writes an encyclopedia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd love to have some canonical summaries of how this shit works.
I would be surprised if he does.
I would be surprised if he does. I don't think he will.
So again, I've been heavily listening to Intentionally Blank, and another thing he has said on there is that he is not one for details, which is...
that, I think, is expressly wrong.
Well,
but I think I know what he's saying when he says that.
He was saying it in the terms of he and Dan were talking about how nerdy they are. Right. But how much not nerdy they are compared to other people that they know. Right. And he briefly mentioned, like, somebody could come up and ask about a very specific part of a specific book or a specific character. Sanderson sometimes doesn't remember.
That's fair.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say he is very detail-oriented on his world building, however, because, like, Absolutely. If you look at, specifically what comes to mind is from the Wax and Wayne series, Chris makes a cameo appearance.
Mm-hmm.
At least I don't know if it's been confirmed to be
It
Chrysalia,
is.
but okay, yeah. Where she asks Wax about conservation of momentum.
Right.
And, whether or not that applies with his weight shifting and everything. And so I think that, Brandon Sanderson is, to the best of his ability, trying to kind of make investiture a scientific concept.
Right. So from the wiki, it follows the 3 laws of thermodynamics.
Right.
And a 4th law, which has to deal with analnasium, but
right.
they didn't specifically spell it out, as Sanderson is wont to do.
Right.
Never.
Well, and then we of course have Sanderson's laws of magic.
Right.
Which is it's a narrative laws, but I think it does also follow. And
I saw somebody in one of the Stormlight groups on Facebook. A lot of people post about Rhythm of War.
Okay.
And I saw somebody comment that Sanderson broke one of his own rules.
Which was what?
Something. Now, I'm not fully versed in it, but essentially they said he let it drag in the middle of Rhythm of War, which, yeah,
a little bit.
I could.
But I think there was
for.
a point to that. Okay, but how did he break one of his own laws? Because I don't see that.
I am unsure.
Okay, because here's the thing. I know his laws of magic specifically.
Sure.
And so maybe there's other laws of writing, because the laws of magic, I don't see any of that being broken. No. Because one of it is, your ability to use magic to solve a problem is directly proportional to how well the readers understand.
Yes.
2, flaws are more interesting than powers.
Yep.
3, always go deeper. Always explore what you already have more than adding something new. And so I don't see any of those being broken by Rhythm of War. No. Maybe we're talking about one of his writing.
Sure. Listen, watch one of his, or all of his lectures on writing. I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
That said, I also understand the point of it, because the fact is his entire point of Rhythm of War was to bring some of those characters to their lowest possible point.
Right.
Before bringing them out of it. Which made it a very tough book to read.
It was.
I'm not going to lie. There were sections of it I did not read as close as I probably could have.
On my second listen through, I skipped a majority of the book.
Yeah. I won't lie. I skipped some sections. I skipped... I don't remember exactly where I left off, but I skipped a lot of the center sections up to the point where Kaladin accidentally leaves what's her name behind, Sil behind, when he falls down a shaft or something. It was very aggravating reading Rhythm of War.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the fact that, of course, I knew things were going to turn out okay eventually.
That is
I did know
a nice thing about Sanderson.
I did know that. But at the same time, seeing a lot of these people make expressly awful decisions.
That is a difficult thing in any book. It is.
And I don't mind small sections of it.
Sure.
Because, honestly, to bring up another series entirely, the Magicians series. Okay. For those who are listening, I'm talking about the novel, not the TV series. You see them make very human, terrible decisions.
Yes.
But one of the things that I kind of saw about Rhythm of War, and I can also kind of see people's complaints about it, I think, is that it's just this entire middle section of people making terrible decisions over and over again. Like, Navani keeps fucking helping...
Rabonio.
Yeah. Over and over again. In explicitly terrible options. And, Raboniel dies at the end, but not before her information gets out.
Right.
And... So and we see, Kaladin sink lower and lower into his depression.
Right. Which I'd say, while it's difficult to read because of how dark that part is not so much making bad decisions as it is, I think, an accurate depiction of...
And the fact is, if that had been the only part of the story, and we hadn't had the whole Navani Raboniel part or anything like that, I actually don't think I would have had that much problem. I think it was the combination of helplessness on Kaladin's part, plus expressly terrible decisions by Navani, plus the obviousness of talking to the child and that revealing where the weak points are that the group needs to destroy. Like, it was just all a big mess, and I think it was a little much. Anyway, but regardless, yes, I think but on one of the things we do discover through that book is that intent is a core part of anything with Investiture.
Oh yeah.
And I think that goes to creating new Investiture users as well.
Yes.
Apart from, well, no, I mean, I think even with Nalthis, I think Endowment intentionally gave everyone breath.
Right.
But that does kind of break the spirit web thing.
The exception proves the rule.
Maybe, and the fact is that what I could possibly say, and this may or may not hold true, I'd kind of be interested to ask Sanderson about this, maybe the fact that breath is put there on the moment of conception rather than having to be put into somebody later,
right,
means that the rule doesn't have to apply.
True.
Because, like, effectively on Nalthis, everyone is a breath user. Whether or not they actively use the breath or not, they have it there to use.
I think it's been stated or generally explained that the spirit cracks absolutely help the person become an Investiture user, but it is not absolutely necessary.
Interesting.
So it's... there's a lot of gray areas, right?
Right.
Which is nice, because it leads to good discussion, but...
Because we also wonder, okay, how does the Sheod work?
Right.
Because clearly it strikes randomly, as far as we've seen.
Randomly for people born in that area.
Yeah, in that area. We do know the geographical rules.
Right.
Because that is necessary. But we also know that it does strike randomly, so it doesn't strike those who are, say, more traumatized. Like, honestly, Prince Raoden has a pretty nice life before he's struck.
Right. Though, I mean, you could say some mental anguish from having to constantly rebel against his father.
Right, but maybe not necessarily as much as, say, Kelsier.
No.
To make a Mistborn out of him. Like,
right.
That was... Ugh. He went through a fucking lot.
Yep.
So, I would say that definitely helps. And, interestingly, maybe it also depends on... Because we know that in Mistborn, it is said that Ruin has a hold on more people than Preservation does.
Right.
We know that Vin was kind of explicitly made to carry Preservation's power, because most people are more tied to Ruin than they are Preservation, which is why Kelsier can't hold Preservation's power as well as Vin can, or use it as well as Vin can.
Right.
So maybe what the cracks also do is allow in Investiture that one is not inherently oriented to, which is why Kelsier became a Mistborn, where he might have been more geared towards hemalurgy.
That is bringing up a whole bunch of confusion in my head. Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, in hindsight, it was all manipulations by Ruin and Preservation to get the upper hand.
Right, of course.
On the part where, with Kelsier being more, having some sort of adaptitude. What word am I?
adaptation.
With the hemalurgy.
Right.
What you just said. I mean, maybe I feel like the way that allomancy and hemalurgy works is so separate enough that are there differing levels of hemalurgy based on the person outside of the initial power they had and the strength that they get?
Well, I would say that what we could potentially say is that people might take to one or the other a little bit better. And so, like, well, okay, like, for example, we know that, okay, from Era 2, we do know that there is a limit to how many spikes somebody can have in them before they are able to be controlled by Harmony. 3, I believe, is the limit before. Is it 2?
It is 2.
Okay.
For the Conjurer.
No, I wasn't talking about the Conjurer. I was talking about people. Because we know that Wax's uncle has spikes.
Right.
And they were experimenting with it to find out how many they can put in themselves to give themselves abilities before they're able to be controlled by Harmony.
Oh.
And I think they said 3.
That is not ringing a bell. So maybe it's 3.
Maybe it's 3. I don't know. Anyway.
For Conjurer, it's 2.
For Conjurer, it's 2. And Conjurer are slightly different because their spikes grant them consciousness, where what's the gang that Wax's uncle is a part of? The Set group. The Set. Yeah, we know the Set are... They don't need consciousness granted.
Right.
They already have it. They're just giving themselves abilities through the spikes.
And some sort of weird breeding program.
Yeah.
Thanks for that one, Sanderson.
Yeah, that was... although, Lee Bardugo's...
God bless you.
Lee Bardugo was the one who wrote the Shadow and Bone series, which I don't know if you saw the TV series or not.
I did watch the... Yes.
Okay. I would recommend skip the rest of the Shadow and Bone series and go straight to Six of Crows.
Right, you've told me.
Yes, if you watch the first season of the show, you don't need any more information than that. However, in one of the... Okay, past Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which are the duology that covers the dregs, which are Kaz Brecker, like those characters from the show, it's their story.
The more entertaining one.
Yes.
From the show.
Yeah, the more entertaining story from the show. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. Anyway, one of the characters from that series carries into the series of King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, which is a duology that takes place directly after the Six of Crows series. It covers the king of the country that the girl is part of in the first trilogy. Okay, so you know how there's the Fold, right?
Yep.
The big shadow thing.
Right.
And how the country that the Fold is going through the middle from is cut in 2.
Right.
That country that was cut in 2, the king of that country is the main character in King of Scars and Rule of Wolves.
Okay.
The new one, because I think the old one dies.
Right.
And the new one's kind of trying to hold everything together because shit's hit the fan because of the Fold. However, anyway, long story short, I'm not going to get too complicated on it. There's a whole fucking Grisha breeding program by one of the enemy countries to, like, have children that are born addicted to a drug so that the country can control the Grisha children.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Yep, that is fucked up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anderson, for not being that
necessarily fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, ooh, boy.
I mean, hemalurgy and Moash. The two most effed up parts of the Cosmere.
Although hemalurgy is interesting, because if you think about it on Investiture, with the spirit web thing, physical or mental trauma. Physical trauma is definitely there inherent in the process of hemalurgy.
True.
So, I find that interesting.
And definitely mental trauma after.
Now actually I did want to get in on something on you.
Alright.
Because we had a little bit of a debate on whether or not planets had their own investiture.
Right.
And we kind of discovered... But here's my evidence as to why I think it is still the case to some extent.
Okay.
Why is Scadrial based on metal?
The physical investiture takes on metallic properties across everywhere. Shard blades.
Right.
Right.
And we each know that there's a god metal for each one.
Right.
But why Scadrial on the whole is based off of metal?
Well, in the meta terms, I'd say probably because it sounds cool.
Right. I understand the meta terms, but I'm talking about in universe.
I mean, it sort of becomes a chicken or the egg thing. So in Mistborn Era 1, the crux was that ruin and preservation, and I assume harmony, cannot see past metal because it's so blinding.
Right.
Was it blinding before they made humans?
I would probably say, personally, I would say yes. Here's the thing. I think whether or not it had a direction, I think that Scadrial's metal was inherently investiturely charged. And so, because the metal was charged with investiture, regardless of whether or not it had an outlet per se, I think the only reason that I think the shards investiture blended with the metal, and that's why the metal is the system that is used on Scadrial.
It could be.
I'm not saying it's inherently that. But I'm going to say I think I think there is evidence there for planets being charged with investiture that is separate from the shards that inhabit them.
If that's the case, I would say that would have been done by Adelnasium before the Shattering.
Potentially. But if we know that investiture permeates all three realms, via
Right.
Sanderson's words, which
Right.
which we know, grain of salt, I understand that. I would say that maybe some of it just forms naturally like that because Adelnasium just might have let some planets form the way they wanted to without
Sure.
a huge amount of intent. Like I mean, if he's a godlike being, he can probably have a measure of intent without sitting down and focusing specifically on this planet and saying, okay, this planet is going to have metal be investiturely
Right.
charged.
That's a good question that I mean, obviously I can't answer.
Right. And I mean, yes, I understand on the meta side, it's like, okay, it's cool, you know, the magic being charged by metal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that drew me to Mistborn initially was that I had never seen that kind of a magic system done before.
Right.
So it was very novel. It was very fresh. It was new. But I would say on an in-universe scale, I think that things can have investiture without it being an explicit decision by the shards. Because, like, why the sand on Taldane?
Right.
Like, why autonomy with sand?
Maybe we'll get some answers in Dragonsteel?
Maybe we will. I'm just saying that, like, I think that things can okay, in the way that organisms can take okay, actually here's a very good example.
Okay.
Long before we ever made machines, there were organisms on this planet that took energy and made use of it. Humans being a prime example.
Right.
We use energy. We
Yeah.
ingest food, we digest it, we get the energy, we use that to power ourselves and move.
Yes.
I think in a very similar fashion, but then we made machines that also require energy.
Right.
But those machines were made with intent by us for a use.
Okay.
I think in a very similar fashion, there were organisms that could take in and, if not use investiture, have investiture as an energy source. Like the fungus that covers the sand on Taldane.
Yes.
That can take in the sunlight and get charged by it. And so they still have that there, even if the intent to use does not come until the shards exist on that planet, and then give that investiture a use for the users.
Big chicken or the egg.
It is. But I would potentially say that the reason that the magics work the way they do on the planet is partly to do with the planet. Scadrial is metal.
Right.
Because Scadrial has investiturely charged metal. Taldane is sand because Taldane has the fungus, which invests the sand.
Right.
And so, and so it's just one of those things where I'm not going to say that investiture had a point or a use specifically until it mixed with the shards investiture and then created the systems that we see.
Right.
But I think that foundation kind of had to be there.
And then I would and then again I would say that Adelnasium had something to do with that.
Probably, yes. I'm not going to disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, we could also say that ostensibly Adelnasium could see the future better than any other shard currently can.
Right.
Which brings an interesting point up about the shattering.
Right. I was thinking that same thing myself.
Like
the way that cultivation manipulated Dalinar and Taravangian,
yes,
to get to the point where they are now,
right,
could very well have a counterpart or a parallel with Adelnasium and maybe, say, Hoyd?
Maybe.
And really, because Sanderson, and this is more than just like a word of Brandon, Sanderson has said the theme of the Cosmere is death and rebirth.
Right. And so, actually maybe the reason Hoyd didn't take a shard,
yes,
but is the way he is and was there, was because he was working with Adelnasium, because Adelnasium basically, in a very Jesus moment actually, if you look at Gnostic texts, anyway, regardless, was kind of like, this has to happen this way.
Yes.
Like, this is going to happen this way. There's no way to avoid it. There's no way to change it. This has to happen for things to work out the way they need to. You just have to be there for it.
Or, for a more secular point,
right,
Doctor Strange in Infinity War.
Right, yes.
That
there's one path, yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure, bud. And it involves a rat turning on a machine in a van in San Francisco. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. So, I mean, all signs point to Hoyd.
Yeah, no, I think that Hoyd was definitely... I think Hoyd has a lot more knowledge about what's going to go on than he says, but I also think he's kind of working a lot more blind, or not blind, let me rephrase that. I think he's working on a bigger scale than the other shards are, but he can't see any of that nearly as well as Adelnasium can.
No, and
I think he's just kind of trusting. I think Adelnasium gave him a quest, and he's just kind of trusting that it'll work out the way it needs to.
I'll throw it out there that it's almost a common trope, but when you have creatures that can see the future,
right,
then the way to counteract that is with, and we watched The Secret of Dumbledore 2 days ago, and that was the plot point, is that you have to counteract
right,
that future sight. So,
well, and here's the thing, that the reason that I like the way Brandon Sanderson did the future sight, and I think it's the way that I would do it if I were to ever put any kind of precognition in
any kind of book
any kind of story I wrote, is the idea of being able to see possibilities.
Right.
Because I mean, and maybe this is just me, I don't like determinism. I don't like it. I hate determinism. It's kind of the problem that I have with, and we'll probably hit this on the post show because I do actually want to do that. I have a whole thing about time travel.
Okay.
That I
Then today's
that we can
post show
discuss. Yeah,
will be about time travel.
Yeah, that will be about time travel and stories and the way that I would.
Then to bring us back on topic, is there anything more we can say about Investiture before we...
I don't think so. I don't think there is. I think at some point, and this may be in the extrapolation point, we will need to talk about Sixth of Dusk.
Right.
Or First of the Sun,
we've been extrapolating for a while, so we can...
Right, I suppose we can work that in. First of the Sun... Or First Sun?
First of the Sun.
First of the Sun, okay, good. Is the only planet we see that has investiture without a shard.
Right.
Now, there is a potential that the deity of First of the Sun was a shard of autonomy.
Right, an avatar of autonomy.
An avatar
Hachi,
of autonomy.
The island.
But we don't know.
No.
So, let's work off of what we have evidence-wise currently. It does have a perpendicularity.
Mm-hmm.
One. It has one, which is actually kind of unique because we don't see anything about Nalthus and where its perpendicularities are. But typically there's one perpendicularity per shard.
Right.
So like for Ruin or for Scadrial, it was the mines where Atium is and the Well of Ascension.
Right.
Were the two perpendicularities. And then Kelsier broke the mines. But, whatever.
As one does.
As one does. And then, of course, Roshar has 3. Because there's Honor's perpendicularity, which can just be made.
Right.
And that we don't see again until Dalinar does. But it is there. It is a thing. We have the pond up where Rock is.
Right, in the mountains.
In the mountains. Which... maybe cultivations?
I believe Azure states it specifically.
Okay. As cultivations?
Yes.
And then we have another one somewhere. And I would say that's probably Odium's.
We should. Though, question...
Right.
Tangent number 56.
Right.
Are the perpendicularities one per planet, or are they per shard?
Right.
Or are they one per system per shard? Because I would argue that Odium's is on Braze.
Right, but then how do the people get from Braze to Roshar?
Through the cognitive realm.
Right, which are perpendicularities. Okay, let me rephrase that. How do the creatures get from Braze to Roshar to a physical form? Because for them to for the soul forms of the not the singers. What are the
No, the singers.
No, the ones who come back in a new body over and over again.
Are they not the singers?
No, the singers are.
I thought the listeners were the.
I thought they gave a specific name to the reborn, though.
Voidspren? I mean,
no, not the Voidspren.
They are Voidspren.
I mean, they are Voidspren, but no, that's not.
Through the Everstorm.
Anyway, regardless, I think there has to be a perpendicularity for them to use. The Returned?
No, that's Endowment with the Nalthus.
Oh shit.
The Regals, well, they are the singers.
They are the singers, yes, but they're specific singers that are given a. Oh, so that's how they look. I have never seen. What are they called? What was the name given to them by the Light Eyes? Given to the singers.
Voidbringers?
No, Parshendi.
Parshendi.
I've never seen artwork of the Parshendi.
You haven't?
No. That's not quite how I pictured them.
Have you
seen this artwork?
I have seen something similar. Yeah, I've seen what they did in the books. I believe it's in Rhythm of War, they did drawings. Ever since somebody was like, oh, they look like Darth Maul, I've just put in Darth Maul for what they look like.
Maybe it's the fused I was thinking of. Cognitive Shadows Singers bound to
The
Odium.
fused.
The fused is
Yes,
the one I was thinking
the
of.
fused.
The way the fused get from Braze to Roshar, yes, is through the cognitive realm.
Through the Everstorm.
Yeah, through the Everstorm. So maybe that's the...
But the perpendicularity, I feel, is for physical realm inhabitants only.
Okay, so here's the question then. How are the Parshendi, or the Singers, I guess, getting to the cognitive realm? Because they do, but they're clearly not using the pond in the mountains, and they're clearly not using Dalinar's honors perpendicularity. But they physically get to the cognitive realm.
Because...
Well, was it the gates?
Are you basing this off of your theory about the end of Wax and Wane?
No.
3?
No. I'm talking about in...
Oh, yes.
Yes. They end up in
part.
the cognitive realm.
That part. Through the gate. Through the gate.
Is it through the gate?
Through the gate. Yeah.
Okay.
Jean could definitely... I could totally see Jean being the way that she messes with the gate.
Right.
Wait, but no, wouldn't it need to have been unlocked?
Yeah, it would have needed to have been unlocked. So there has to be a perpendicularity somewhere. Either that, or they're the ones that have the power of movement. No, but we see that because that's the one that Kaladin fights.
Pursuer.
Yeah, the transportation is the one that Kaladin fights.
Right.
And it's teleportation.
But then there's the Will Shapers have the one power, and it's slightly different than the Else Callers.
Well, yes, but we know that that's through the bond that they form. We know that the
surge of transportation, right?
Right, the surge of transportation. But we know that the reason that it works differently per surge binder or per Night Radiant order,
right, is
because of the
Spren.
No.
Oh.
Well, yes, but no. It's the fact that the resonance.
Oh.
The reason that it works differently for Else Callers versus Will Shapers is the resonance. The Else Callers are tied to the cognitive realm through the soul casting.
Right.
And so their transportation takes them to the cognitive realm. The Will Shapers are different.
Right.
So, the thing that I would say...
Yes.
Which, anyway, headcanon for my OC for the Rosharan system.
Sure.
Anyway, regardless, it doesn't matter.
It does to you, and that's what matters.
It does, yes, it does to me. So the thing that I would say is that I think there has to be a perpendicularity somewhere for them to use to get to the cognitive realm.
Maybe
because the Singers only have a single power based on the Spren that they fuse with. They don't get two like the Knights Radiant do through forming the bond. They only get the one. And so I would say that we see the transportation in the Singer version through the Pursuer.
Yeah.
In the same way that the wind ones can't do the gravity sticking thing. They just fly. That's their whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe Odium can just make his own, which we just don't know.
I mean, we don't know. I'm just saying there's probably a third one somewhere.
Yeah.
Although, if we're wrong, fucking send us an email and let us know, because I feel like there's probably something about the gates that we're forgetting, maybe. I don't know.
If Jean corrupts the Spren at the gate, could she do that?
I mean, maybe? Well, what about the one that fucking sends everybody to the cognitive realm through the gate when they try to use it?
That was Jean.
That was Jean. So maybe, but also isn't she, like, not helping Odium? Because
she's kind of independent.
Yeah.
Which I feel like most of them are becoming independent of him. I don't know.
A
lot of speculation here.
A lot of speculation. I'd also have to go back and reread, because honestly it might be answered at some point.
Maybe.
Although the gates being a gate to the cognitive realm is very interesting. Because it's
True.
almost like they're man-made perpendicularities.
You could... theoretically, I feel like a bondsmith could... As they were being created, could create a bond between...
Well, what about
Well, it's not... It's that the gate transports to another spot via the cognitive realm, but the people never actually go into the cognitive realm, so it's like the will shaper, but then Ja'anat corrupts it, and the group was supposed to die, but then they end up in the cognitive realm.
Well, and then you also have the interesting thing of Yasna and all the else scholars being able to transport themselves to the cognitive realm without a perpendicularity.
Right.
But they do need a perpendicularity to exit? No.
They just need Stormlight.
Right, so why did Yasna have to travel to that one specific point to get out of...
Because she didn't have any Stormlight.
And where she was in the cognitive realm at that point, she was able to get Stormlight?
I believe so.
Okay.
Or that was the perpendicularity in the forest?
I need to go back and reread the series.
I think she either traded or found somebody gave her Stormlight there.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, tangent again.
Wow.
Regardless, we do know the First of the Sun has a perpendicularity, has investiture, in a somewhat more passive form.
Mm-hmm.
Because the birds.
Right.
Which kind of have to grant their gift to the person who owns the bird. But anyway, regardless, it does have investiture, but no shard that we know of.
Yeah. But it is set so far in the future.
That's also true. We don't actually know how far into the future it is. Maybe this is... Well, but here's the thing. Chris writes about it.
Right.
Well, and we know that... Okay, Sixth of Dusk takes place way in the future.
Right.
But the system of the birds they've been using has existed for a... I mean, they make it sound like it's existed for a while.
Yeah, but given the spot of technological... Thank you. Advancement of the...
people from the sky.
Indigenous... Well, I was going to say the indigenous people versus the people from the sky.
Right.
Kind of shows that they haven't been
there.
The humans haven't
been.
Right.
But, I mean, we still... Yeah. It's complicated on that front, because while Sixth of Dusk is really fascinating as like a glimpse into the far future of the Cosmere, and potentially any other books that Sanderson writes might do similar.
Sure.
We don't know what's going on the wider Cosmere. So we don't know what the state of Adonasium is, or the rest of the shards, or anything is at that point. We do know that Chris writes about it, though, which is interesting. Because she does write the fact that it is an outlier as a planet with a perpendicularity, but no shard.
Right. A lot of confusing stuff here.
A lot of confusing stuff, because I know that Investiture can allow people to live longer. There's the whole thing about relativity, time dilation due to heavy investiture areas. But it does make me wonder, why is Chris writing about this planet if it has not existed for that long? And how long have the birds been doing this when humans haven't even been there? Because again, that brings it back to, why fruit? Why fruit, why worms, why birds? Like,
because it's cool?
Meta state, yes. Meta reason, because it's interesting and cool. In-universe reason? But maybe because fruit is investiturely charged and it mixed with a shard at some point, or whatever.
Yep. I got nothing.
I know. Nor do I. I mean, not concrete.
Right. But yeah, that's probably a good wrap-up.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the fact is, investiture is complicated. Like Adonisium, we don't have a lot of canon information on it as a concept, but I would say it's an energy that permeates all three realms, can take a variety of forms, potentially can end up charging a specific matter on a specific planet.
Potentially.
Such as metal or whatever on Scadrial, or sand on Taldane. Or, I guess, the lichen on the sand on Taldane.
Yeah.
And it powers all the magic systems. And I think canonically that's what we have.
I think so.
And everything else is what we extrapolated through the rest of this episode. Well then, until next time, don't panic, World Hoppers.
Life before death, strength before weakness, journey before Pokemon.
Okay, so, post-show. Time travel in books.
Time travel in books. In movies?
In media.
In media. And real life? Time travel.
Potentially. So here's the thing about time travel, is that if we think about time travel, and interestingly enough, Homestuck is one of the things that made me think about this. Which I don't know if you've ever read Homestuck in any way, shape, or form.
I tried.
That's fine. The artwork is a lot for some people. But what you have is that you do have these portals that open up.
Okay.
Okay, so the majority of Homestuck takes place in a separate dimension from the one we currently exist in on Earth.
Okay.
It starts on Earth, but it moves to a different place called the Incipisphere, I think.
Okay.
And the planet there can create portals and meteors fall through these portals, sometimes at different times, mostly to the end of the world. I'm not going to get too into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact is, time travel doesn't have the paradox people think it does.
Okay.
Does that... Are you following?
I'm following. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm following.
Like the fact is, you are still existing, regardless of whether the future you came back from exists or not. You're still you where you are.
Yeah. So then...
So if you travel back into the future, there's probably a different you somewhere else that followed the chain of events that you have now set into motion through you messing with the time stream. And you would also exist.
So, alternate history, or it has always been?
Okay, so let's refer to this as Person A and Person B.
Okay.
Person being a unique being.
Right.
Person A travels through a time, hits a point where they go back in time.
Yes.
Now they are Person B, because Person A still exists.
Right.
There's Person A and Person B, because now there are two of them in the same time stream. Okay?
Right.
Or in the same temporal location.
Sure.
So, okay, let's put a little bit more concrete in this. 1964. Person A is sitting in 1964.
Okay.
Goes to 1980.
Yeah.
Travels back in time.
Okay.
Because of a DeLorean.
Sure.
Whatever. Now there's Person A in 1964 and Person B, or actually, let's even do this. Person A in 1964, Person A2 in 1964.
Okay.
Which is Time Traveler from 1980. Person A2 is Time Traveler from 1980.
Yes.
If Person A2 travels forward after messing with the time stream back in 1964 to 1980, there would now be Person A and Person A2 both in 1980. Because original Person A, followed the new time stream that was created from Person A2 fucking around with time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
So therefore, moves forward, exists in new future, along with Person A. Person A2 exists in new future, along with Person A, because Person A2 is kind of time agnostic, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because he moved through time, whether or not the future that caused him to go back exists or not doesn't matter.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I don't have an issue with a time travel paradox. I don't think there actually is one. Because I don't think time needs to be a linear progression of cause and effect.
In media.
Yes, in media.
Right.
In real life, I don't know. I mean, Star Trek would support my premise because Spock exists in the very first Star Trek. Or in the very first of the new Star Treks. With Spock traveling back in time and fucking around with shit.
Right.
They don't, physics-wise, they don't have any issue with this.
I thought it was a Spock from an alternate universe.
No. It was a Spock from the future.
Oh.
Yes. I don't think you'd even create an alternate timeline. Like, Marvel tries to explain it that way. Right. But I don't think that's even the case. I think you'd just rewrite the timeline.
My brain hurts. It's really all I've got.
Because again, it's the effect that brought you back in time already happened.
Right.
So therefore, even if it doesn't happen in the future, it already did.
Yeah.
So you're going to be back in time regardless.
Yeah. You've come unstuck in time.
Yeah, effectively.
Billy Pilgrim. Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. Slaughterhouse-5, Kurt Vonnegut.
Nope, sorry.
Great book.
I would assume. I've heard a lot about it. I've never actually read it.
Yeah.
But anyway, regardless, yeah, you become unstuck in time. So therefore, whether or not the future plays out the way that it originally did is not necessary.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
I think you're I think that would be a good premise. For,
yeah. And so that's, I think if I ever deal with time travel in any of the media that I write, that's probably going to be the way that I play it out. Yes, you can absolutely go back and rewrite time. No, it does not cause any paradox. Yes, it is a valid solution to problems.
Yeah.
So long as you have access to it.
Right.
Like, I don't like the way that Harry Potter handled it. Because it's a very deterministic way.
Yeah.
Which is the way Harry Potter solves it. It's everything that was going to happen already happened. It was just people's perception of it that was different. So,
right.
Like, Buckbeak never actually died.
Right.
There was no point at any point where Buckbeak died. They just heard the ash swish and thunk the way that, they saw it from the direction of the other characters.
Sure.
So, which made me disappointed, but that's...
It's Harry Potter.
Yeah.
What can you do? Complain?
Stop reading them.
That is... Yeah.
I have not seen a single Fantastic Beasts movie. I never plan to.
Okay.
Because, actually, there's a person on YouTube.
Okay.
Who just goes by the title Sean. That's his YouTube channel. Channel is just called Sean.
Nice.
But he does a lot of leftist analyzing of different things in the world.
Okay.
Like he did one called... what was that book called? He did a really good one that was a review of a certain book, and I'm going to need to look at his YouTube channel to remember the name of the book. The Bell Curve.
Okay.
Which was all about how IQ is... It was a pro-eugenics books without ever actually talking about eugenics.
Great.
Yeah. Talking about how IQ is determined by genetics, and IQ is the way to get forward in the world, and so we should be trying to selectively determine for higher IQ, etc., whatever. But no, he does a really good breakdown of the fact of why not only is the book's premise awful and uses terminology wrong, but also that their sources are absolute garbage. And so it's just a terrible book all around.
Okay.
But he also does a really interesting in-depth analysis of Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling's storytelling methods and things. And it's really good, and I'd recommend you listen to it if you have 2 hours to kill, because it is an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, sure.
But, I mean, he goes into the different way that J.K. Rowling deals with certain plot points that she brings up, and why her political views means that certain things in Harry Potter never get wrapped up, like the half-elf, or like the house elves situation. That never comes to any kind of fruition.
No.
We see Dobby's does, specifically, but the rest of it, nothing ever changes. The system around house elves never change.
Right.
That plot point is never brought to a close. Of Hermione finding out that the house elves are there, and
wanting to make them free.
Well, and the fact that, Hogwarts runs off of slave labor, like, that's never really addressed.
Right. The only way it's a kind of smoothed over is the idea that they want to be.
Right. But even that's kind of a squidgy idea if you get into it. Like, it's all well and good for you to say that, yes, the slaves want to be slaves, but, like... like, you can write this in any way you want, Rowling. Really slaves are the way you want to go. Especially when that was an excuse that a lot of people used for keeping African Americans as slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, like... I'm not saying you can't write it. It's your universe. You can write what rules you want, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, so... And he goes into the fact of, like, actually J.K. Rowling's political views, not even saying that she's pro-slavery, but her neoliberal political views kind of absolutely entail individual change is absolutely necessary, but systemic change is not. All problems arise from individual corruption in a pure systemic system, not that the systemic system itself is flawed and needs to change.
Well, that's just... That doesn't make any sense.
I know, I agree, but that is also her political view, because that is how neoliberalism works in England.
Oh. I mean, that could be the case. That could, if you had a perfect system set up.
But it's not.
Nowhere has that.
Right. So the fact is, but that's why Dobby is freed. But the house elves themselves their system is never changed, because the system is not the problem. It was the individual terrible master of the Malfoys that was the problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm 3 movies into the Fantastic Beasts, because that's what's out. I'll probably finish them.
It's fine, whatever. I'm not criticizing you for watching them.
No.
I'm just...
Yeah, no. I feel like you can, at least superficially, if you don't agree with the creators' ideas, or at least some of them, you can separate that from the art somewhat.
Yes, I think death of the author is real. However, there's a couple of things on that front.
Right.
One, I think the author's intent can come across in a lot of ways that are more subtle than people think.
Sure.
Like the house elf situation and neoliberalism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that viewpoint is there whether or not the author intended it to be or not, and while you can read it and take something else away from the books if you want to, that neoliberal English viewpoint is still going to kind of always be there, because it is a continual theme through the Harry Potter books that the system is never the problem. It's individual people in the system that are the problem.
Right.
And that is, you see it in multiple forms throughout her books. It's not just the house elf situation. It's the Ministry of Magic and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I do also agree that, like, a lot of people read the Harry Potter series and came away feeling like just because they were outcasts doesn't mean that they were bad. Which is why it was such a smack to a lot of people who were LGBTQ when she came out as a transphobe.
Yes.
And so...
Which was weird.
Yeah. I did kind of turn when I heard about that and look at her, and not literally, but kind of figuratively look at J.K. Rowling, and I'm like, did you read your own books?
No.
Because, like,
Sure.
The entire point was that Harry was different, but that was okay.
Right.
And just because he was different and not like his foster family, that doesn't make him wrong.
Yeah.
That he's a full and valid person regardless.
Yeah. And I do believe her transphobia comes from a personal experience.
Oh, does it?
It does.
Oh, okay.
Which I am not excusing.
No.
But is more understandable than just an out of nowhere.
Right. At the same time, it does make me wonder about her issue with trans people as a whole from its individual experience, when her political whole ideology is that the system is not the problem, it is individuals within the system that's the problem.
Right. It's and I am one to quickly be like, oh, I have enough of my own problems. I don't need to criticize or worry about somebody else's.
And to be fair, I am probably a little more personally affected by this, not because I am trans myself, but I have a few close friends who are absolutely trans.
Sure.
And so I have seen... Plus, I actually had a friend I had to cut contact with because of the fact that she was so behind Rowling's views. I'm like, I cannot continue interacting with you. Because...
Understandable.
Right, because I cannot continue, in good conscience, continue being a friend. I hope you will someday come around and come into your own views rather than just adopting the views of someone else.
Right.
But I can't continue to interact with you when your ideological thing is that these two people that I know and care about very deeply, their entire identity is invalid.
Right. Which you can't... As one individual, you can't say that about another individual.
Right. I have no authority to say what somebody else's identity is.
Right.
And I think that all identities are valid within reason, that reason being whether or not they affect me.
Right.
If you expect me to bow down to you because you identify as a god, that's where that self-identity...
Or where there is some sort of harm.
Right, of course, yes. Like, as my mom used to say, and I actually hold to it, the right to swing your fist ends when it meets my nose.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so...
That's really it.
Yeah.
If there was more of that kind of thinking in general, be in a better place.
I believe so. I think the world would be in a better place, because... Yeah, I don't think it is our prerogative to decide what other people identify as, insofar as it doesn't affect you.
Right.
So, yeah, but we are not in that world, unfortunately.
No, we're in our own little worlds, talking about the Cosmere.
We are
mostly
bundles of flesh with electricity coursing through it that is talking to another bundle of flesh with electricity coursing through it.
And ultimately, atoms talking to atoms.
Yep.
A fun fact... The Words of Radiance. So...
Right.
So this, and I may cut this to be earlier. Fun fact. One, I've talked to you about how I enjoy that there is a book in world named after the...
Oh, yeah. There is an actual book called
Right.
The Way of Kings.
So, listening to Intentionally Blank...
Right.
This is, of course, the point. It is the Stormlight Archive.
Right.
And the archive is those books.
Right, yes.
So, and he told a funny story, because the first few episodes of their podcast is trying to name the podcast.
Ah, okay.
Which eventually just ends up being Intentionally Blank. He said that he wanted to name Words of Radiance the Book of Endless Pages.
Okay. Because
of that book.
Right,
because
the book that Yasna hands
right.
Shallan. Yes.
And Sanderson said his editor refused because it was going to be 1,000 pages long. You do not need to feed critics their one-liners.
Right.
So I thought that was entertaining. He changed it to Words of Radiance. So now I am doubly interested in what the 5th book is titled.
Right. I am also curious, and I would like to ask Brandon Sanderson this. is if he actually intended Way of Kings and Words of Radiance to be a single book. Because I will say where Way of Kings ends and Words of Radiance picks up. Okay, here's actually a better thing.
Okay.
I can pick out the ends of Words of Radiance.
Right.
Battle ends, they end up in Urithiru.
And, specifically, Sadius dies.
Well, Sadius dies, and Dalinar
becomes the Storm Daddy.
Yeah, bonds with the storm. God damn it! Because that just reminds me of the term that somebody is. So, a person I know watches Critical Role.
Sure.
And apparently, somebody on that, they're doing an interlude here, which takes place in the past of the world that Critical Role takes place in.
I tried to start watching with this latest episode.
Oh, that might be why you're super confused.
No, keep going.
Okay. Anyway, apparently the character who's playing the Paladin.
Okay.
The nickname for him is Paladaddy.
Wow.
Anyway, regardless, and I can pick out where Oathkeeper ends. Oathbringer, sorry, yeah. I can pick out where Oathbringer ends.
Right.
Giant battle.
Yes.
And then I can pick out where Rhythm of War ends. But until you reminded me, I could not pick out where Way of Kings ended and Oathbringer picked up.
Really?
For the longest time, I could not remember where that break was. I do now know. I do now remember.
Which is
the Battle of the Plains and bring Dalinar's group back from their estrangement on the plateau by Sadius.
Right.
But for the longest time, I could not remember where it ended. And I think it's because the ends of Way of Kings blends into Words of Radiance so seamlessly.
Yes.
That picking out where that transition made was lost on my brain for the longest time.
Well, it would be cool to ask and find out, which part of Way of Kings Prime, which, for those who may not know, Sanderson wrote, 9 books before Launch was published.
Right.
Or at least wrote a big portion of those.
Yes.
So it's possible that parts of Way of Kings and Words of Radiance were 2 things.
Right.
You listened to them, right?
Yes, I did listen.
Did you listen to them back to back?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so did I. And up until my second reread, yeah, I felt the same. It does blend.
Right.
Second point, I believe there's no time difference between those 2 books where there is a gap between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4.
Yes, but between 2 and 3, it's very small.
It is.
Between where Dalinar and everyone ends up in Urithiru and not Raoden. There's Renarin and Adolin.
Yeah.
Adolin kills Sadius. It's a very
small.
Very,
okay, so
very
take that
tiny.
one out. But it is yes, now we have transitioned to Urithiru.
I think what it is that there's a thematic difference between that, because the ending of Words of Radiance is a very literal and figurative transition of Battle of the Plains, Urithiru, war to peace.
Right.
And there's the whole Everstorm meeting this.
Also,
the
no
High
Knights,
Storm.
no Knights Radiant.
Right. 2 Knights Radiant.
Right.
You don't get that thematic change.
No.
From Way of Kings to Words of Radiance.
You get slaved men to free men.
Right. But even that's not that much of a change, because even up until that point, Bridge 4 was kind of operating independently.
Right. As they are still doing.
So while they are officially freed men in Words of Radiance, as opposed to being slaves, their behavior doesn't change that much.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the problem that I have, or that's the problem that I had of picking out the ending from between the 2, because that definitely did blend for me. And I am curious about whether or not it was supposed to be one book and they split it because it was 1,000 pages. Because we saw that with, and I was actually kind of disappointed about this, with Dresden Files and Peace Talks and Battleground.
Sure.
Was, I believe the original book was supposed to be about 600 pages, and then they split it into two.
They did.
Which was somewhat disappointing to me. I don't know.
With both of them out now.
Let me say this. I will say that, and maybe this is just the knowledge that I have that it was supposed to be a single book. The Ends of Peace Talks does feel a little clumsy.
Yeah.
And I think that's because it was supposed to flow directly into Battleground.
Right.
And so probably people listening to it right now back to back, it's not going to feel that way because they'll just move right on through. But to wait a month for Battleground to come out and to sit on the end of Peace Talks where it ended, I don't know. It felt a little weird.
Yeah, but I mean, props to Butcher for not wanting to have his fans to have to pay $50 for one book versus
$60 for two.
Was it? Oh, for hardcovers?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, but when Sanderson did his Kickstarter, we did have people saying, "Can you split up the payment? Can you do? I can't afford this as one lump."
Right.
So.
Unfortunately, I think that's a problem on Kickstarter, though.
I mean, yes, but if what I'm saying is that you could apply the same situation where somebody couldn't spend $50.
I'll agree, and so yeah, splitting it into two and $30 a piece. I agree. Yes, and honestly, I probably would have actually applied the same to Kickstarter, saying that they should have a payment plan,
right,
thing where you can pledge that amount, and you would have to put down a down payment of a certain amount of that initial payment.
Yeah, I feel like the way that could happen is that it would only be an option to change to after the product is backed fully, because the way that Kickstarter works, they
don't charge you until the Kickstarter ends.
Right. So if they did say, oh, installments, well, these people need that money up front to make the product.
Right, so unless it ends, you can't do installment payment. And your payment will not be included as part of the Kickstarter until it's fully backed. So what you do, you run the risk there of the product won't come out because you weren't able to back it fully on the offset.
Right.
Which yeah, no, I think that would actually work because your payment would not count until the product is fully backed. Then you can pay in installments and still get it, but you also didn't necessarily contribute for it coming out in the same way as others did.
Right. But then that would get into, well, okay, they say that people signed up by the end of all the installment payments, you'll get $3 million, and you needed $1 million. Somebody has to finance that up front, and so then somebody takes on the liability
fair
for those people doing the installments.
I think, okay, here's the thing. You want my personal opinion?
Of course.
I think Brandon Sanderson should have run it for longer than a month.
Okay.
I think a month was too short. Asking people to shell out $620 in the span of a month, a lot of people need more time to plan than that.
I agree.
And I feel it was a little classist, to be personally honest.
Yes, that was... there's a lot of pros, and there's a lot of cons to the way that they did it.
Yeah.
The pros being, if he is being the change he wants to see in the publishing world, where pre-ordering gets a bonus.
Right.
That's what one of his main motifs.
Right.
Like, they should come with a little...
Yeah, no, it absolutely should.
Like, that'd be great.
If you pre-order something, it should come with a little something extra.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So...
And that's kind of how pre-ordering used to work, actually.
That's true.
A lot of the times, if you pre-ordered something, you would get something additional along with the book.
Right.
Or whatever you were pre-ordering.
It's difficult when... And this is going to sound a little arrogant, when you are like us and you have the ability to see that not everybody's in the same situation as you,
Right.
and there are people not as fortunate as you, and you see this and you're like, it there's a little guilt if you let yourself feel it.
Right.
There's some guilt there.
There is some guilt. I think the bigger guilt for me comes from is not being in a better place or being able to afford it, but the fact is you and I specifically
Right.
are in a place where we can see that not everybody, especially because we've probably been in that place where, I mean, if you had asked me 2 years ago to fund that, I would not have been in a place to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
I would have been able to maybe get the digital and audio copies, but that would have been
Sure.
That would have been the totality of what I would have been able to afford. But is not being able to turn around and help others.
Right.
Because we were able to afford each of ours individually. Actually, you helped me with mine even a little bit. But you and I both didn't have the chance to turn around and help 2 other people totally out with theirs.
That's true.
Even if we had known people who were trying to.
That's true.
And so the fact is that there is a little bit of guilt, but I'm kind of a little bit upset at Brandon that he ran it as short as he did.
Right.
I think that I don't disagree that pre-ordering should come with extra stuff. Totally behind that. I think running it for a pure 30 days, you're cutting off a lot of people's chances to enjoy that kind of thing.
And on the flip side of that, maybe, I mean, he said he didn't even think they'd get a million.
Right.
So, okay, yeah, so it blew up, right, which is not necessarily his fault other than for being a great writer.
Right.
And I don't know if you can extend it via Kickstarter's rules.
I don't know, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, but they did do the backer kit, so it was for 2 months.
Right. I just feel like... Because okay, here's the thing. I'm totally behind the idea of, people will be like, oh, well, don't spend $12 on movies. Dude, $12 isn't going to pay the rent.
Right.
Like, if somebody is unable to afford rent, but they're spending their $12 to go see a movie because they can, and it provides a little bit of enjoyment, I'm not going to criticize. $620 is rent.
That's true.
And so there are going to be people who look at that and be like, my choice is to either continue to have an apartment or to pay this backing, to back this product.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's... And I get it. The books themselves were only like, what, $40 for the 4? For the digital copies?
For the digital.
Yeah. So I get it. They could just get the books.
Right.
I don't know. It's...
And for the amount of stuff, the price...
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Definitely...
Domestically.
Right. Definitely acceptable.
The shipping international... I mean, so there's also like another thing to consider is that this was a first time doing something like this.
Right.
Which is always going to be like if he does something again like this for 8 years down the road.
Right.
Not because there's a pandemic, but just because they plan it or whatever. I could see them having an international shipping thing that's way less now because they do have a warehouse, that kind of thing.
And here's the thing, actually, I wouldn't have minded if this was a month if they had started with something smaller.
True.
Like just backing the first book of the 4 that he had planned. It was that they left a month for you to afford a year's worth of shit.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
That is tough. I do wonder... I expect, and it's always just like, on one hand, on the other hand, on one hand, on the other hand.
Right.
Like, if they get the money more up front, then the items they can get for later boxes are going to be even better.
Right.
That kind of thing.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, like, I'm not upset at what I'm getting.
Right.
And I'm not upset that they got the money that they did because, like you said, hopefully Brandon can do it to buy back some of the licenses that he let out, and they'll be able to fund that money into better products or better versions of the products they were already going to give us or whatever. I understand, as someone who has been in a less fortunate situation, I understand how devastating it can be to want to afford all that stuff and not be able to afford it.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see if they would do something like a survey where you could say, okay, from what boxes do you think you would want items?
Right. Or what I would love to see is if they I would love to see them order more items than they have actual backer kits going out.
Right.
And then sell the surplus on their store for a cheaper price.
So if they do a survey, they may be able to gauge better what to get. Would you rather have a t-shirt? Would you rather a keychain? That kind
Right. Because, I would love to see that. I'd love to see them order more of that stuff and then sell it individually so that people can get, if not the entire, box of that month, at least maybe some individual things they really wanted.
But the unfortunate reality is that they are working out of their own warehouse.
Right, which, does have limited space.
So much.
Yeah.
They can only ship so much. Well, no, I won't say they can only ship so much in a reasonable time. They could, just say, this will take 6 weeks to process.
Right.
So, there's, it's bittersweet, but...
And I'm glad we are getting what we're getting.
Yeah.
And the fact is that there's a good chance that if there's something in the box that I don't particularly enjoy, I might turn around and sell it on eBay for a reasonable price.
Right.
Because I remember that when you pre-ordered Dragon Age Inquisition, there was a bunch of shit you got, but one of the things you got was a set of tarot cards.
Oh.
If you pre-ordered. And I didn't really care, but the person I was dating at the time really wanted those tarot cards, but she was not able to pre-order Dragon Age Inquisition. She just got the game when it came out. But I was able to get on eBay and actually find a set of the tarot cards that somebody was selling.
Huh.
Just the cards by themselves, nothing else.
Sure.
And, I think I had to shell out about $100, but it wasn't terrible for what I was getting, and the person I was with really wanted it, so I didn't mind. But it was also cheaper than the full pre-order by itself, because that was pretty high, if I remember correctly. So.
I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, on that front, pre-order should come with something extra, and Dragon Age Inquisition definitely delivered on that front.
Yeah. They still do it with video games.
Yeah, they definitely.
Most. At least the big ones.
Yeah. And I think the problem, and maybe the thing that Brandon Sanderson was kind of fighting against, and I agree, is that video games do it now, but a lot of other medias don't.
Yeah. And even the video game ones have dropped in quality.
Yeah.
I think the best ones I've seen are keychains, honestly.
And I know Fallout 76 got a shit ton of flack for the low quality of their pre-order stuff.
Fallout 76 got flack for everything.
Well, yeah.
So.
I think that just... Who's the one? Is that Bethesda?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bethesda dropped the ball on Fallout 76.
But to talk about other video games, did you watch the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet trailer?
No, however, I have seen the amount of hype that has surrounded Lechonk.
Lechonk.
Yes.
That is... I'm pretty hyped. So it's the... I think it's Scarlet is a past theme.
Yes, and Violet is a future theme. And I'm going for Violet.
Oh, good.
Partly because I always go for the cool colors, which
Sure.
purple is only kind of, because it's a mix of a hot and a cold color.
But it's typically
considered a cool color. And
yeah.
So, and I always have, except the one exception to that is that I went for gold instead of silver.
Yeah, that's
weird. And I don't know why, because I like silver over gold. I don't know why I went for gold version, but there you go.
Weird. I'll probably go for Scarlet. I really like the designs.
Yeah.
I was a little hesitant about I don't know if you saw the legendaries.
Oh, yes, I did.
So, my initial thought was, this is weird.
They do look a little bit weird, I won't deny.
I don't think the wheel in the Scarlet legendary, in something in Mirakai, Karakai, whatever. The wheel in Scarlet Legendary's chest. It's kind of clear they're going for some sort of motorbike theme.
Right.
Not the biggest. It grew on me.
But it's initially
not the worst design.
Also, apparently, the two legendaries are named actually after the Japanese words for past and future.
I saw that. Yes.
Here's the one thing that I will say that I hope. I hope the story does not change significantly between the two.
given what they've done with Pokemon recently, it won't.
I'm hoping not, because even in the past that was also the same. It was the same story between both. Really, the only difference between games was the Pokemon you had access to.
Right.
Now, Black and White deviated a little bit, considering they had an entirely different section depending on which one you went to. They
That's
had the
right.
White Forest and the Black City or whatever. And Sun and Moon, not too different, just the time that you were playing. Because if you got Moon version, your daytime hours would be nighttime
Right.
in the game. And Sun was...
Which was a smart...
Yeah, it was a smart play. I don't disagree with that. I think it was a smart play. I don't know if there was any other huge differences apart from some Pokemon.
There weren't. I played all 4 of those.
Right.
Sun, Moon, Ultra
Now,
Sun,
Alpha Ruby and Omega Sapphire, I have, but I never actually played. So, I don't know.
I played enough for both of us.
Right. Was there any significant difference?
No. I mean, it was the same as Ruby and Sapphire.
Right, which there wasn't a huge... There was a different enemy team depending on which one you played.
Right. And so...
And a different legendary, of course. But different legendary has always been the case, except for Red and Blue.
Right.
But even in Gold and Silver, it started being a different legendary, because Red and Blue was and the 3 birds.
Right. Yeah, so no, I played, I must have played through Alpha Sapphire like 20 plus times. Because, so, I decided when I love those games.
Right.
Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Ruby and Sapphire were my most nostalgic.
Gotcha.
I had Crystal. Crystal was my first owned game.
Right.
Ruby and Sapphire were Ruby was the first one that
see, that's kind of the same for me, except set it back a generation.
Sure.
I had Blue version, but Gold and Silver are really my...
kind of where it was like cohesive, and you kind of... The jump in graphics kind of I latched on. So I played Omega Ruby, and I got through it, and I caught all the legendaries I could, and I did that, and then I decided, well, I really want a living Pokedex.
Okay.
So that's gens 1 through 6 at that point.
Right.
Which, between X, Y, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire, you can find all of the Pokemon in every generation.
Okay.
I did use some of the Pokemon from White 2 because it was easy to transfer them through Pokemon Home.
Gotcha.
But, so what I would do, and they have the Global Trade Station. I finally had a game that had, the 3DS had internet access. I didn't have to pay for it or anything.
Right.
I don't remember if you had to on the DS, whatever. DSi. I wanted a living Pokedex. So what I would do, I used Omega Ruby as my base game. And I got Alpha Sapphire, and I would play through it to the point where I got the legendaries.
Okay.
Because you can get, between the 2 of them, you can get all the legendaries.
Right, right.
Except X and Y. Legendaries, obviously. So to do that, you just have to fulfill certain conditions with Pokemon in your team. And it takes approximately 12 hours, if you're not super speeding through it, 12 hours to get through the game to the point where you can catch the legendaries.
Okay.
So I would cycle through this,
over
catch
and
the
over.
legendaries, put them up on the GTS to trade for the Pokemon I needed.
Ah, okay.
Easy peasy. Got a living dex. Been super easy to maintain since then.
You know, it'd be interesting.
I don't.
And it's something we've never seen before.
Yes.
But I kind of wish we would. So the fact is that in a lot of games, you can get the other game starters through trade or
Yes.
personal quests in the game or something like that. What I would love to see, because if you look at, I think it's Gold and Silver, because I think those were the first ones where you can see, or maybe it's Red and Blue, where you can see where a Pokemon is if you have it in your Pokedex. Or is Gold and Silver the first one to do that?
I don't know. I don't remember using that in Red and Blue or Yellow, but I barely played them. So.
Yeah, I didn't really
Barely
have the foresight to...
Yeah. The Gold and Silver, definitely.
Gold and Silver, definitely. So let's say at least this. If you get one of the original Kanto starters, there are islands that are on the map that are unreachable in game, where it'll place the face of the Pokemon, saying this is where you can catch them.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But so the fact is that, like, in universe there is a place to catch these Pokemon, even though you can't ever get there, and they probably don't actually exist in any fashion except on the map. But I would love to see some of those Pokemon become able to be wildly caught. Like, not gotten through in-game quests or whatever, just, like, walk in the tall grass and run across a Squirtle.
I mean, the closest... I don't know if you ever played Let's Go.
I did, yes.
Right, so...
I played Let's Go Eevee, to an extent.
Right. So when you chain in certain routes...
Right.
The Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle will pop up.
Right, yeah, I do know that. And so something like that, yeah. Like, I would love to see that become an option where, your starters aren't available to catch wildly, because that's kind of one of the things. But previous starters from past generations would be. Because I'd love to go through, like, Sword and Shield to catch a Cyndaquil.
Yeah, they did. I mean, you get the Kanto starter, and then you can find the Kanto starters in the dens.
Right. Because, like, I get
Yeah.
starters are more powerful than a lot of the Pokemon out there. They're kind of intended to be. They're supposed to carry your team.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be able to solo for at least a small portion of the game.
Right.
Because until you get to Viridian Forest, I mean, I guess you can catch before that. You can get a Pidgey or whatever, but
I was
and a Rattata, but like, let me see this. I don't know anybody who ever actually did that. At least I didn't. I'm not saying that those people did. Fair enough.
I mean, I played through Fire Red so many times, like, I had to change it up.
Right. And Pidgey is actually good.
Oh, yeah.
And to be fair, I can't say that I didn't. I will freely admit, when I started to play Black and White, which I never actually finished, I did...
I don't think anybody actually finished Black and White.
I did catch, I think, one of the cat ones. There was a cat one, wasn't there, in the first route? Kind of a purple and yellow cat one.
Purloin?
Was it Purloin?
Yeah.
Hold on. Yeah, Purloin. Maybe? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. What does it evolve into?
A Lipard.
Right, I'm trying to see what that looks like.
Purple and yellow cat. Just kidding. I mean, it is, but...
Of course, this site doesn't have a picture of the Lipard. The picture is broken.
Just gonna...
Yeah, I'm just gonna Google Lipard.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, Purloin into Lipard. I caught a Purloin and literally dropped Snivy.
Oh.
I hated the starters from Black and White.
Oshawott grew on me. I like Samurot's design because it's not anthropomorphic.
I like Samurot's design. It looks weird compared to what comes before it.
Oh, agreed. Yeah.
That's what bothered me about Oshawott. And then Snivy, why do they lose legs?
Evolution.
Why does it lose limbs?
Snakes lost limbs.
Yes, I realize that, but Sniffy does that from... I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah.
And then, what was the ground one?
Ground? Fire?
Or grass.
Grass was...
No, grass was Sniffy. So fire was...
The little piglet. The little...
Oh, yeah.
Tepig.
That turned into the freaking...
Embor.
Wrestler. I just did not like...
It was, you know, up until Scarlet and Violet, all of the fire Pokemon were following the Chinese Zodiac.
Oh, interesting.
In some way.
Interestingly enough, also, up until, Sword and Shield, all of the grass types were reptiles.
Yes. In some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, in some way, shape, or form.
Chikorita being a dinosaur. Right. I mean, that's the stretch. Meganium is...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was
Meganium's
reptile enough.
Reptilian. Yeah, it was enough.
Yeah.
Enough. Yeah, but I actually really like Scarlet and Violet.
So Dragon, and then Cyndaquil.
Which I think they just put in for the rat.
Kinda. Yeah, I can kind of see it. It's supposed to be a porcupine, but it's close enough.
Right.
Or a hedgehog, I guess. Like fire instead of
Yeah,
quails.
I never actually thought about... I thought it was chinchilla. No.
No.
There are other Pokemon that are way more chinchilla-like.
Yeah. And then the monkey, and then...
The chicken.
The chicken.
Chicken then the monkey.
Oh, yeah, chicken then monkey.
Then
yeah,
the
you're
pig.
right, you're right. Yeah, and then pig. Huh.
And
yeah, no, I never picked up on that before.
Fox? Is Fox one of the Chinese zodiacs? No, that's...
The dog is.
Dog.
Yeah.
So they put in Gen 6 for the dog.
Right,
And then Gen 7 was the tiger.
Right.
And Gen 8 was...
Was Gen 8 Sun and Moon?
No, Gen 8 was Sword and Shield.
Oh. So it was the rabbit.
That's right. Yes.
So still following the zodiac.
Yeah. And now it's a ghost lizard. It's Fuecoco.
Yeah, which...
I
remember the duck.
Yeah.
And I think I might go for the grass cat. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the yeah, no.
I love Fuecoco's design.
By all means, go ahead and love them. I do not.
I love all three, actually. Which one do you like, the cat?
Yeah, I'm going for the cat.
Yeah,
I'm going to go for the grass cat. Do we know what their evolutions look like, or
Nope.
is it just... Okay, so
Not
it's
yet.
all supposition.
That'll likely be the next reveal. Or, no, that'll be like one of the last reveals that they do.
Here's somebody's that I think actually looks pretty convincing, though it won't be that, I know.
Is that cat standing up?
Yes, with a rapier.
I understand some Pokemon being anthropomorphic as, like, Mr. Mime.
Right.
The definition.
Right, Mr., even if it's a girl.
Right. I hate, with a passion, anthropomorphic starters.
Fair.
I think it's dumb.
Well, okay, but how anthropomorphic are we talking here? Because, like, if you look at Squirtle, it's bipedal. Even though turtles are not traditionally bipedal.
Right. So, when a design of the first evolution, or the starting
Right.
base evolution, when the design follows the base, it's better.
Fair.
Okay. So Blastoise, to me, yeah, he's standing on two legs. He does not have a near human face,
Gotcha.
in my opinion.
Fair.
His arms are very short.
So, let me ask you this.
Okay.
What about Rowlet?
Hated it.
Oh, okay. You hated the final evolution?
That was the one I went with, too.
Gotcha.
Given, and of course I will be a politician on anyone that you ask me.
Right.
You know that I actually like that one. No, it was still
Disappointing?
I wish it wasn't.
Yeah.
And the only reason I went with that one is the other two were even more anthropomorphic.
Right.
So I went with Grookey in Sword and Shield.
Okay.
Because its final version was anthropomorphic because it's a gorilla.
Right.
Which made sense.
Right, it does make sense because it starts out as a monkey.
Right. And what was the water? The water one was a lizard?
Yeah, salamander. It was more of a salamander.
It was more of a
lizard.
salamander.
Yeah.
Sure. That became a private eye. Or like a James Bond.
Sniper type thing.
Right.
It wasn't super anthropomorphic. Like, its move was, but it still went quadrupedal for most of it. Like for movement and stuff, it was still mostly quadrupedal. Yeah, at least within its battle.
Oh, okay.
I don't know about following. I don't
just the
remember
pictures I've seen of it, and especially the fire one was obviously a soccer player. Like, and I get that they go with a theme, but the first 3 generations of starters, even the first 4, top notch.
Yeah.
Keep going with non-anthropomorphic. Yeah, Feraligatr stood out.
So did Quilava.
Right.
But they were definitely still animals.
But Pokemon, but real animals will raise themselves up in an attack position.
Right.
A lot of times.
Right.
If they have that ability, sure. So, but the pig wrestler.
Yeah.
I know Snivy's evolution was not anthropomorphic. In fact, the first evolution was the most anthropomorphic, with its arms and legs the way it was. And I get this is all made up, but.
And like, if you look at Trico was always bipedal.
It was.
But he still looked like a lizard.
Yeah.
Even up until the end.
Right.
Also got False Claw, which
was awesome.
Awesome for a starter, because that makes it the perfect catch tool unless you're going up against Ghost.
Right. Yeah.
Or False Swipe, not False Claw. False Swipe.
So I am hoping that from that picture you showed me of the YouTube somebody's designs of them, the alligator looked like an alligator.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that the cat became a
fencer.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is...
You know what I want to see, personally?
What's that?
I want to see more actual grass elements on the cat. Not just it being green.
Oh, sure.
I want actual, like, if it's a grass Pokemon, give me grass elements.
That makes sense.
Because otherwise, why didn't you just make a normal type? Like, if it's just going to be a tiger or whatever.
Right.
Why did you make it a grass type?
Right.
Give me some grass elements to it.
Right. Like Torterra was obviously a turtle that had a giant tree on it.
Right, exactly. Bulbasaur had the bulb.
Yeah.
Trico was... I mean
it's got the pine...
Yeah, at the very end it has the pine elements to it.
Venusaur had...
Chikorita, obviously.
Yeah, with the
leaves and the petals. Snivy did not. Except it kind of had, like, petal things at the very end.
Or like leaf offshoots.
But that wasn't until the final evolution.
Yeah.
And then...
6 was Chespin, which all 3 of those starters were anthropomorphic at the end.
Right.
I went with Chespin. I felt like it was the least anthropomorphic.
And then the grass and Sword and Shield was... Well, that was Chespin, wasn't it? No, that was the gorilla. The gorilla. Yeah. So that was fine.
Sun and Moon was the owl. And
and
I can see, like, okay, this Pokemon is grass because they live in foresty areas and they blend in.
Right.
So, I get the green cat. I do agree it would be nice to see more elements that are...
Yeah. Because, like, okay, here's the thing that's kind of bothered me about the grass types being entirely, like, reptiles. I get it, reptiles pretty much, well, they definitely don't exclusively live in forests, but it's an easy...
Sure.
It's an easy, comparison to make, but, like, there's a whole lot of other creatures that live in a forest.
Right.
There's squirrels. A squirrel grass type would have worked in perfectly. Which they kind of did with Chespin. Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
But that was also...
What even is that?
Is it a, what's the... Chipmunk?
Is it a chipmunk?
I have no idea, to be perfectly honest.
Spiny nut. Fennekin is just a fox.
Right.
Froakie's a bubble frog.
Right.
Chespin is a spiny nut.
So what? Is it literally
It's literally called the spiny nut Pokemon.
So it's a nut. It's literally a plant.
The quills on its head are usually soft.
Like, I get it. Like, we have Sunflora. We have Pokemon that are literally plants. Chespin did not strike me as that. We should probably stop recording.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay, see you next time.
The music you hear is Part 3, The Spirit, from Zavadilla's The Music of Elantris, produced by B-Roll Records. Available now on Apple Music, Spotify, and most music providers.
If you like what you hear and you want others to hear it as well, please leave a rate and review. It really helps us get more listeners.